morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's 2021. For the first time, we're back we're going to do another show today. So, good morning, Christos.
Good morning, Happy New Year. Are you sure it's not like 12/35, 2020?
It feels like it's March 319th, 2020. I mean, I don't know. So far, it's been an interesting week. We had Bean Dad, who sounds like a giant jackass.
That was insane.
And
what was Bean Dad?
Else?
Oh, he's so out of the loop.
This
I'm
guy
way out of the loop.
This dude on Twitter wrote a long thread about how he tried to teach his child how to use a can opener by being incredibly opaque and just, I don't know, kind of a jackass to his kid. I mean, I've got a 7-year-old, and I don't know, I wouldn't do that to him. I'd be like, hey man, this is how you use a can opener. And then if he asked me again later, I'd be like, well, let's think about it from the last time, not, hey, 7 hours from now, maybe you can decrypt my instructions from earlier in the day. I don't know.
Yeah, this seems a little crazy. So sorry, I'll catch up on my Bean Dad lore later.
Yeah, it was insane yesterday. You know, the amount of conversation and heat that he brought in, and then everybody.
Yeah,
this is why I stay away from Twitter, guys. Which, you know, unfortunately for the PowerShell fans, is not always. They don't always love that, but Twitter, man, it's just sometimes it's a little too much for me.
It's a tool. I find it useful as long as I stay in the bubble I want to have for myself, because you can totally get lost into the Twitter sphere and then get messed up. So what I mean,
you have to remember it's for, you know, identifying and ridiculing Bean Dads. That's what it was made for.
No, it's for reaching out to the PowerShell team when I can't get them on Teams.
Exactly.
I DM you guys. There you go. We're talking about, just before we started the stream, we were talking about the new Apple chip and the M1s and how we would love to have one. So we're accepting donations. If you like the show, let us know. But
they are very exciting, and I do believe, you know, I may be coming out in front a little bit of intros or whatever, but I do believe that the PowerShell team is getting a hold of one or two to do some testing. I know .NET's been looking at the thing, so, you know, it's like that thing's going to be running your PowerShell very soon, hopefully.
There you have it, folks. You heard it here first.
That you might have actually. This might have been where you heard it here first. I think that was a break that we just made.
And that's a wrap. We're good to go.
That's it. Thanks for joining the show. It's the M1s are very exciting. See you guys.
So let's do some introductions here, because I think it was a little bit irregular how we introduce subjects. So you have us, JP and Christos. We've been here for 7 months now. Whoop. And you'll see a lot more of us in the new year. We have some really exciting stuff. We have exciting guests. We have fantastic topics to talk about. And we kick off the year with our really good friend, Joey Aiello. Did I pronounce the surname correctly?
It's Aiello, actually, with the...
Aiello.
Yeah, none of the silent L's. You get that a lot in California, but...
oh, really?
Yeah.
Because, you know, in certain languages like French and Spanish, the double L's...
Yeah, the double L's, yeah. But no, it's Aiello.
Aiello, okay.
Italian.
Perfect. And he's a PM for PowerShell. We've been working together for, 2 years now? And it was a great opportunity to have him on the show and talk about PowerShell. And in fact, we'll be seeing you guys a lot more frequently on the stream. I think once a month now, you'll be coming to talk about PowerShell and what we're doing. So it's really exciting to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Christos. And as Christos said, I am the PM lead for PowerShell. We've been doing the PowerShell 7 stuff, and you know, Christos was just a pleasure to work with as our marketing representative for a very...
I was, not anymore.
For, unfortunately, all too brief a period of time. But we had a phenomenal Ignite 2019 on the backs of Christos' efforts. So I'm really excited to be here, and really excited, you know, what he's been working on too. I want to hear more about what you've been doing, man.
It's a different type of collaboration. So for those ones that are new on the stream, we focus on identity, but it is an identity show that is more than just identity. we love to bring people to talk about things that they build around identity. So usually identity is a 5 or 10% of the whole solution. We try to provide end-to-end scenarios. So not just how do I do X with identity, but how do I build a solution end-to-end, and where does identity fit in there? And we had people that showcased PowerShell or they built stuff with PowerShell before, but it was, I'm building something, I'm using PowerShell for X. And there's a strong element of identity even in PowerShell, because you need to authenticate against something before you run your scripts. Especially in the cloud space where you have Azure PowerShell, and then you have the bigger PowerShell. It's vitally important to do it correctly, i.e. using service principles and what have you to securely run your scripts. And now with PowerShell being supported on Azure Functions, it unlocks so many scenarios. I mean, it's not now; it's been there for a while.
Yep.
But Azure Functions and PowerShell have been my go-to things when I want to run something against Azure. So it's fantastic to have these capabilities.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's very interesting to me how little real hard info there is on identity out there, just given how critical it is to, every application's got to do identity in some respect.
Yes.
Nowadays. And, it's, if you go out there, like you said, you get the hello world examples, but in 99 times out of 100, that thing says, don't ever do this in production. And you're like, what do I do in production then? So it's good that you guys are filling this gap. And I know certainly in the PowerShell space, there's been, identity has been a very challenging problem over the years. That's not something, just being able to pop up a password prompt, and take a string securely can be a very tricky thing. And so absolutely we want to get all those questions answered. And just filling a good niche here.
Brett Miller is saying Azure Functions and PowerShell is love. It is indeed. You can do so many things these days with these things. So what's the future for PowerShell, right? You have PowerShell now running everywhere, which is awesome. It's open source. So do we call it PowerShell Core, or with PowerShell 7 we went mainstream and now everything is just PowerShell 7 ideally?
We did the .NET thing, which you can blame me. I know the naming has been insane, and but yeah, we did what they did, which is basically we dropped the core from the branding, nice. And then we said, hey, we're gonna rev the major version number up to 7, so we're now at PowerShell 7. You can keep calling it core as a way to differentiate it from Windows PowerShell if you want. Right. But we're really just trying to drive. The problem is we got a lot of feedback over the years that core really gives the connotation that it's a lesser package, that it's just the core pieces, right? And it's like, well, really at this point, 7's more of a superset of Windows PowerShell, or at the very least a Venn diagram that's got plenty on the 7 only side of the set. So we said let's just call it PowerShell. This is the one and only PowerShell we want to support going forward. Windows PowerShell is still maintenance mode serviced. We do tons of, security updates are like P0. That's, but we want that to be a stable platform for the customers still, stuck in the inbox Windows land. And then, 7 is the du jour going forward.
Yes. So we have PowerShell 7 that runs everywhere. We're just discussing about the M1 chips, and that PowerShell will be coming to that soon. And then we have
soon asterisk no ETA. Don't at me.
We're not promising. We're not putting dates here, but we're working towards that. That's the whole point.
Well,
right?
you can at me actually. Yeah, adding me is okay.
And then we have the current Linux and macOS operating system that do support it out of the box. What I've noticed over the years is that we also have revved up the tooling. So right now, I think the recommended way of working with PowerShell is VS Code, because it is fantastic for editing stuff. I think if you're using IC, then ideally you should be moving away to VS Code. But VS Code offers so much more than just what ICE used to do before. So now you have VS Code and PowerShell. What about CodeSpaces? Can you run anything in CodeSpaces?
Yeah, I gotta actually get up on the CodeSpaces details. Because there's so many ways to draw that dotted line. Right. When you're leveraging VS Code Online. Like, I know for sure one of the basic building blocks here, I think, that gets you in the door is that we support excuse me, the VS Code over SSH feature.
Right.
So that's the one where, hey, I'm running like a headless Visual Studio Code on a dev machine server,
Right.
And that could be hosted in the cloud. That's like my persistent dev workspace, and I SSH to that machine from a VS Code client on my arbitrary thin client laptop or desktop workstation or whatever, and then I get this connected VS Code session in the GUI space. So it's not that I'm actually SSH'd in to a terminal, but I actually have this connection that allows me to just basically be rendering a remote VS Code on my local workstation, which means that exactly what you were working on with your Git repos, exactly where they were and all that sort of thing. You just connect into the server from whichever machine, and suddenly you're back in that workspace, in that workflow. So I think that CodeSpaces like relies on a lot of that for feature sets. So I think at this point, I don't want to misspeak and say that we support it, but I think I'm fairly certain like Tyler Leonhardt and folks around that were buzzing about CodeSpaces stuff with PowerShell on Twitter. So you might know more than I do here, actually. But,
well, you know what? Maybe we should take it out for a spin one day. We have a question from Fuel Snubble. What is the future of PowerShell ISE?
Yeah, so you kind of alluded to this before. The future of PowerShell ISE is the same as Windows PowerShell, which is to say that we want to leave it in place for the same reasons that we don't want to make changes to it or improve it, right? Which is basically that there's a stable component in the operating system that we know that people depend on. They're going to continue depending on it for a very long time. We liken Windows PowerShell to CMD, which we're very close with the folks that work on CMD and console hosts and Windows Terminal and all that. And Rich Turner published a blog post a long time ago saying CMD is dead, long live CMD, right? And that's kind of how I feel about PowerShell XE and PowerShell ISE, which is to say, hey, like, we know you got batch scripts you're going to be running. You ran for 20 years and you're going to be running for 20 more. We're not taking the thing out. And the PowerShell and ISE are the same reason. We know you're RDPing into that one machine still, and that you still got to do that one thing on PowerShell ISE, and the script is, it's on that machine. You're whatever. We're not touching it, but we also don't want to touch it, because if we do anything to it to improve it or do anything like that, like we've done it in the past. Oh, we're going to make this accessibility fix or whatever. Boom! Like, oh, we broke all the tab completion for ISE. How does that happen? Well, it turns out locales are hard, and testing across 96 versions of the operating system or whatever is like not a bulletproof process. But it's we want to make sure it works forever for you. So you get what you get. But code is really for both Windows PowerShell and PowerShell 7. Code's where it's at. Yeah,
in fact, I tried early on to get somebody from the team to come and do because in Identity we have a lot of PowerShell scripting, and we have a lot of people, even internally in our team, that use PowerShell day in, day out. But most of them were not aware that VS Code is the way to go forward. So we were planning on getting somebody from the team to come and do a session like, what can you do with VS Code today, and why is it better? Like, what are the features that we can use?
Right.
So maybe we can actually plan this for our next meeting or the next session, where we can do maybe 10-15 minutes of a tour around VS Code and PowerShell.
Yeah, definitely. And for those of you that don't know her already, I'm happy to bring in Sydney Smith, who's the PM on a bunch of that.
Yes.
And she's phenomenal. We'd love to go through just a tour of all the VS Code stuff. I mean, it always kind of surprises me when I hear that, because as somebody that like I was using VS Code kind of when it came out, it was like, what's this? What's going on? And it was very clear to me with all these like language mode suggestions and stuff that if something wasn't supported by a first-party platform owner or language owner, there was definitely somebody out there that was building an extension for it. So when I hear that people are like, I didn't know I could do PowerShell stuff in code, I'm always like, what can you not do in code? Exactly. Like, it's all out there. You just got to get all the, and they even tell you open up a little file. They're like, you're going to want the PowerShell extension for this one.
Yes.
Buddy. Yeah.
It's fantastic how VS Code has a great ecosystem. So even though Microsoft is not fast enough to churn out all these different extensions, the community jumps in and fills the gap, which is great.
It's open source, baby.
Finally, JP has rebuilt his machine, and he's only using VS Code. Only took us what, 9 months? It's not too bad. So what's the future for PowerShell? I mean, are we feature complete? Are we now like what are we adding as we go forward? Because I believe that with 7 we did a major jump up and we included new APIs and what have you. But what should people expect from PowerShell as we move forward?
Totally, yeah. So 2021 is going to be a great year for PowerShell. You know, it's definitely somewhere where we're not slowing down, right? The pedal is to the metal here in terms of stuff that we're implementing. The team's got more stuff to do than ever.
Nice.
There are a couple projects that I'm going to be excited to be announcing over the next month or two. You know, stuff that we can't quite talk about yet, but that we've been sort of incubating on the side. So for those of you, because we always get the folks going, it seems like the contributors on the PowerShell repo have been a little bit absent the last couple months or whatever, and it's like, yes, like we're they'll get to your issues, but also like those folks are doing some stuff that will be awesome. But we're wrapping up a lot of modules because we have this issue, right, with the platform and the ecosystem, right, with PowerShell. The platform is really like the language, the runtime, that core PowerShell platform and package. The ecosystem is all the modules around PowerShell that you use, everything you get from the PowerShell gallery, all the tooling that helps you use all that stuff. And one of the things that I think .NET sort of realized too with 5, and that we're kind of figuring out with 7, is that hey, there's a lot of stuff here within the PowerShell package that we don't really want to break. Right? Like people are really starting to take a hard production dependency on this thing. We played a little fast and loose when adoption was a little bit lower, but at this point, hey, the runtime's got to be rock stable, right? Yep. And so in that regard, we're really trying to increase some of the governance and the requirements around contributing things to PowerShell, right? I'm going to be going back to Steve Lee, the engineering manager for PowerShell, today to let him know that I'm not quite done with some stuff around what we're calling PowerShell working groups, which are basically going to be a way to really open up and decentralize the decision-making process within PowerShell. So we simultaneously want to kind of lock things down a little more, but we also want more folks coming in from the outside and really scaling ourselves out so that we're leveraging the open source community for contributions and design and decision-making processes and that sort of thing. So you're going to see that happen in PowerShell, but with that, some of the process and governance around, hey, like we want to contribute this thing to PowerShell, well, you're going to have to jump through a couple hoops, and it really needs to be justified why you think this thing belongs in the core PowerShell package. Because as I've been bearing the lead here, we really want to move most of the innovation out to that module ecosystem, right? And that doesn't just mean relying on our community members, but it means that, hey, when we have great ideas, we want to go to the PowerShell gallery to ship those ideas, and then decide, hey, is there demand for this thing? Is this the right user interface? Do we need to continue making changes here? We want to be able to deliver that innovation down level to 5.1. We want to be able to continue updating that module on a basis that is independent from the PowerShell release cadence, which is roughly annual. And so that's why you see modules like PowerShell Get 3.0, secret management and the secret store, the predictive intelligence work that we're doing in PS Readline with az.predictor module. There's a bunch of these. I should have a list in front of me, and I'll probably pull it up in the next 30 seconds. But there's a bunch of these modules that we're doing that they're going to work on 5.1. You've been able to track with the previews, as we've released, whether you're a PowerShell 7.0 LTS customer, 7.1 active branch customer, or you're someone that's always rocking the previews with 7.2 already. The point here is that you can play with these things, and we see tons of hype for the secret management. For those not aware, this is a module that basically centralizes the abstraction for retrieving secrets and credentials, right? So, hey, I use the Windows Cred Store and I use Azure Key Vault, but I also got some machines over there on Linux that are using HashiCorp's Vault for secret management. Okay, well, you don't have to write 3 different scripts now depending on where you're interfacing with that secret. You just write the one script get secret, get secret foo, and then you just swap out the configuration behind that so that your Linux machines are using HashiCorp and your Windows machines are using CredStore or AKV or whatever. So we've already seen like we put out this preview module, then you get folks in the community building providers for it. You already have folks that built like KeyPass and AWS Secret Manager and all this different stuff. And then, people are using that in 5.1, 7.0, 7.1, 7.2. But we really think this is going to sort of centralize the abstraction for, hey, like script authors now can put stuff out there that says, I don't care what secret provider you're using. This is configurable such that you can use it with whatever you want. And that infrastructure is kind of built into the ecosystem. We want to, in 2021, keep looking at scenarios like that where we can sort of go, hey, we want script authors to be able to write more universal code, and then have the machine owner actually decide, hey, is this script? Where's the script going to go for a secret? Where's the script going to go for, say, logging? Where's the script going to go for SQL database or whatever? We've got a bunch of these we're kind of incubating. So
that's awesome.
That's what we're looking at. But there's really on top of that, we're doing 7.2, and there's going to be a planning and roadmap blog coming out in the next couple of weeks. So I know I'm going a little bit long here with our philosophy of planning as I lead into just say we're writing new modules and we're going to ship a new version of PowerShell. But
that's okay. I think so. I just flattened my machine a while back, a couple weeks ago, and I decided I wasn't going to install anything unless I absolutely needed it. And yesterday I needed to do some SQL stuff, and I thought, if I only had a PowerShell module for doing all the SQL stuff, this would make things so much easier. I wouldn't have to install anything, and ended up using like the SQL stuff in VS Code, but
almost had.
Almost.
It'd be pretty cool. I don't know. Like, I end up using PowerShell now more than WSL. Like, I use WSL for almost everything, and then in the past 30, 45 days, I've started using PowerShell a whole lot more. And just because, it's there. It's available. Why not?
Well, this is actually, you raise a great point, which is one of the things I left off the list for something that's very important, near and dear to my heart in 2021, which is getting PowerShell 7 closer to Windows Inbox, right? So right now, like, you're having to go get PowerShell 7 if you want to pick that up, which means that if you're using PowerShell on your super minimal, recently flattened machine, you're probably using Windows PowerShell, right? So we want people to be able to pick up the latest and greatest even easier. One of the things we did with 7.1 is we actually shipped PowerShell in the store. So if you're on a Windows 10 client OS, you can go and grab that from the store, which is certainly easier than navigating to GitHub releases, finding the right MSI for your SKU and architecture, installing that thing and then updating it on a cadence that you kind of manage yourself. This is, hey, I'm going to get auto updates. It's like a managed application. That's fantastic. But then you're going, well, yeah, but what about server folks? What if I want to, install this in an automatic fashion? For 2021, we're looking really hard at getting into the Microsoft download catalog. This is a huge priority for us. What that means is that you get support in Microsoft Update, which is Windows Update for non-Windows stuff. You get SCCM, you get WSUS, it's the Windows Server Update Services. You get all these places where suddenly the PowerShell 7 package can just be picked up from the download catalog's repository and audit it for update compliance and all that sort of thing. So, we think that means we're going to see more golden images out there with PowerShell 7. We're going to see more folks deploying it in IT and server environments because it's really a priority for us because we keep hearing, it's like folks go, I just don't, like, why am I going to go install the thing if I got to keep updating it and I got to keep checking on it and all this stuff? I got enough applications as it is. So, that's kind of the goal there is exactly for folks like you, those recently flattened minimal machines.
Well, I did install 7. I don't remember if I did it. I know I didn't do it through the store. I saw it in the store and thought, oh, that's interesting. But I was worried it was like going to lag behind or it wasn't something that was actually supposed to be there. So
there's a couple weird quirks with it, unfortunately. So that's, but they're pretty minimal.
Or maybe it was winget. I don't remember. I did install like PowerShell 7, but I've got 7.1. Like, how do I get to, how do you, like, when is this going to update? It's on me to update it, right?
Right.
Yes.
Right. That's the problem. Yeah.
I like the prompt though. Like, hey, 7.2 is out. I don't have to go and check the repo every time. So it says 7.2, it gives you the URL. You go to GitHub repo and download it, which is great. but having a more mainstream way of downloading and updating things, that would be awesome. Because a lot of chat about PowerShell. Somebody said, well, let me see, who was it? Somebody mentioned Docker. So I think it was Robert Tables. Hey, it says, you know what? There is PowerShell in Docker. I might go and try it, which is great.
Please do.
I have installed it from, so Brett Miller saying, I have installed it from HemeBrew. So the
Homebrews are great. Yeah, and this is actually one thing I should note here, is that, you know, I'm talking exclusively about problems that really only exist on Windows today, right? If you're using PowerShell 7 on Mac or Linux, your brew updating. You know, if you're on Linux, you're apt updating and upgrading. So, you know, it's, or yumming. I don't know what you do with yum. But yeah, no, so this is, you know, it's largely a solved problem elsewhere where you have package managers like winget. We also do support winget. So as winget becomes more prominent, like that is going to be a very easy way to go and grab PowerShell supported version. You know, so all these are ways to go pick up software. And our goal is, like, we talk a lot about ubiquity, which is just being everywhere. Like where if you need PowerShell in a place, you use a certain install mechanism, like we want to just support that so that you don't have to really change your ways to fit ours. And Docker's another great example of that, right? Those Docker containers are very well maintained. You know, we've got folks that are very hardcore about getting all those images and tags updated, and it is no small feat. But you know, I use the Alpine one at home for home automation stuff on Raspberry Pis. You know, picking up the latest one for Windows or for whatever, it's very easy to do and to just test out. You know, I'm pretty sure that thing works with the VS Code extension. I could be mistaken, but it should.
Should. One thing that El Capitan Squirrel said, which I agree, it's like my secret tool for PowerShell is that it's backed up by .NET. So you can, you know,
exactly.
Read modules, you can create your own modules, but if you ever get stuck and PowerShell can't do what you want to do, you just call into native .NET namespaces and you write your .NET code, which is callable from PowerShell, which is like...
Yeah, I mean, you can sit there, you could just dynamically compile a bunch of C# and then just run a function. Like, you could do whatever you want. So that's kind of... that's always a very nice fallback. And for those... You know, unfortunately, we typically have folks in the other direction, right? Which are like, hey... I want, like, let me fall back to bash or batch, or let me fall back to, you know, something in the GUI or whatever. But yes, for those .NET devs that come in, because I'm sure you've got a zillion of those here watching your show that come in and use PowerShell, the ability, like, just imagine if you're writing a bash script and then you're suddenly like, you know, it'd be really nice if I could just, you know, invoke a little .NET here or whatever, and you just sprinkle it in. It's pretty sweet. So.
Yeah, I use that a lot, sadly. Probably more than I'm supposed to. I've got scripts that are like full of classes and all this. It's like, yeah, why not? You know, daytime conversion functions and stuff. It's all sorts of good things.
Back in 2003, I created a Franken system where it would do SQL backups and then copy those backups across data centers using PowerShell. And then I would also set up replication on those SQL servers after the backups. All done via PowerShell. I think I have a blog post, a 3-series blog post, parts. But it was scary, the capabilities that I was able to do back then. That wasn't even cross-platform, right? 2003 was
right.
You know, mainstream PowerShell. But the damage that you can do as a .NET developer with PowerShell is just crazy.
Oh yeah.
And CI/CD. Someone saying, Brett Miller is saying, XPlot PowerShell comes into its own when doing matrices of tests in CI/CD. I just can run multiple scripts across all OS.
Huge scenario for us, right? If you're doing cross-platform .NET development, especially, but really any kind of cross-platform app development, you know, what are your choices for running integration or even a unit test script that works across platforms? Like, where are you going to be able to run, you know, something that is going to test your application works fine and have only single piece of logic? You know, if you go out there, most major cross-platform open source projects, you know, they got a bash script for the Linux side and then maybe a PowerShell or a batch script for the Windows side, or they're using some proprietary test framework that, you know, has a bunch of dependencies and that sort of thing. PowerShell's out there integrated in all major CI/CD build agents. It's out there in GitHub Actions. It's out there in Azure DevOps. We know that Travis CI and or does Travis even exist? I forgot what their fate was. I'm trying to...
Still exists, I think.
Okay, I know there was something shifting around with Travis. Circle CI, the major CI vendors. So it's there, and you could just write this PowerShell script, and a bunch of times that PowerShell script looks basically identical to the Bash script. Like, a lot of people think that because PowerShell, like if you go look at the documentation, PowerShell's using commandlets and the capital letters, and I'm going to have to use this terrible, I don't like how it looks, and I'm stuck with that. The reality is, if you just are running a list of commands to do some validation and then writing that to a file, that's just copy paste your Bash script in, and now it'll run on Windows too. And that's it, right? I mean, it's just so... and be as pithy as you want and use all the crazy, GNU tools or whatever you want. It's definitely that's a huge one for us, and we see a lot of folks. Unfortunately, our telemetry doesn't go the next step down. We're very respectful of privacy from open source perspective and all this sort of thing. But I suspect when we see these giant chunks of Windows and Linux users, in our usage data, that a lot of that is folks that are deploying PowerShell in CI/CD environments and on pull request time and all that sort of thing. Nice.
Chickenman says, going back to your comment about integrating or embedding PowerShell 7.2 to golden images, from a sysadmin perspective, that will be fantastic because it will allow them to deploy faster. So I think that validates your approach into trying to make it more available and also help with the adoption, because people like, do I go with 7? Do I go with 5? Which one should I support and whatever? So that's a great validation there from our audience. Someone's asking.
Yeah, that is one of those ones, Christos, where there's always a couple top requests where you're going, yeah, we know there's some folks that want this, there's some folks that want that. This is one of those ones where you're like, I don't know anyone that doesn't want this one. It's the first thing everybody asks me for. Like, it used to be like the AD commandlets and the Azure commandlets working, and now it's like, we just want it on the box. It's like, I know. We're gonna get there. I promise.
Chickenman says, I love how good PowerShell is at converting stuff like JSON to objects.
Yes.
So you can poke at it. That's a good point.
Yes, convert from JSON. I mean, even if you're using the Azure CLI, let's say, this is like a great scenario you see all the time. Azure CLI in a lot of cases emits big blocks of JSON, right? And it's all exactly the data you need, but it's a big old JSON block. And you can use stuff like JQ. That's fine. We've plenty of folks that love and use JQ, but the arguments can sometimes be a little cryptic, and sometimes you get a thing where then you got to go filter. You got to learn JQ in order to filter through JQ versus PowerShell. As soon as you have something as an object, you're just using like primitive PowerShell knowledge, right? Hey, here's how I get the members on an object. Here's how I access a property. Here's how I access a member function, etc. If you can just go from JSON to that generic object representation, you can do whatever you want with the object, format it as a table, bing, bom, boop, and you got all your Azure goodness from the JSON right there in PowerShell. So that's I'm glad people are using it that way. And like I said, it's interesting to see, even you got folks who like prefer the AZ CLI, but then they're using it in PowerShell with the JSON commandlets. It's like, it's very mix and match. You do what you like.
A couple
so
of
I'm curious.
Go on.
In WSL, so like I use PowerShell on Windows and WSL and use Bash and ZSH, but how much do you see people using PowerShell in WSL? Like I see there's plenty of use for using PowerShell on like a Linux server, right? So for build server or even production server, whatever. But how much do you see people using it like in WSL2 as their main sort of environment for scripting in Linux?
It's funny because depending on who you talk to, like I sometimes get the inverse of that question, which is like I can understand why you'd want to use it as an interactive dev tool, but like, why do I need to deploy it to my servers, like to do server, so you get like it's just funny, kind of dependent on which world you're living in. But we see a lot of usage in WSL. I think there's lots of folks that, one of the big things that WSL brings is the entire GNU tool set, right? Yeah. Which is huge. Like we've shipped, we've shipped BSD tar in Windows. We've shipped curl in Windows. We've shipped
OpenSSH.
OpenSSH, yeah, that was a project that I PM'd for a number of years. Yeah, we've shipped OpenSSH in Windows. So, we're starting to get to that kind of core tool set but nothing ever comes close to all of GNU Linux user space, right? And that's why we did WSL as a company in the first place, because we knew that there's just some folks that are going to be like, there's this one thing missing. It's in Ubuntu. I just want the one little thing. So, okay, here's all of Ubuntu, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, folks want to go and use, they want to use LS, the GNU LS, and then they want to go and use PowerShell after that. That's extremely common. We see a lot of it in our telemetry, where folks are running the Windows Linux kernel that is as WSL reports it or whatever. It's very common, and I think it's for a lot of the same reasons that you guys already been citing that you would want to use it in the first place, which is just like, hey, I want to move between these two spaces. One of the things that I do want to just rep real quick, I'm gonna try and see how fast I can pull this up here. Do you drop links in your chat and stuff like that, Christos? Is that
absolutely? Yeah,
that's fair to do. Oh man, I totally blanked on his name, but there's a guy. I'll find it as we get talking here. But there's a guy who works on the command line team who published a blog post on the command line blog, basically about how they projected all of the GNU tools from WSL into PowerShell in a non-WSL run space. Ooh. So in other words, like it goes and collects all of the commands that are available within WSL,
right,
and projects like wrapper functions into your local PowerShell commands, so you can use them inside of pipelines that are not inside of WSL. So like, oh, I want to use GNU LS, I guess. Okay, I can like type LS or whatever his special invocation is for things that exist in both spaces. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to come up with a better example. Let's say it's wget. Yeah. I really like wget. So okay, I type wget. Boom, and then I can pipe straight to, some Windows command, and it's actually going to, under the hood, call bash-c with that wget, get the text back, pipe it back up to Windows, and then, send it out. So that's really cool. And then based on that, he also had done some work around the tab completion. So there's something called PS Unix completers, where we actually just put this logic into a module. PS Unix util completers. I don't know. Oh no, that's what we call it now, right? Microsoft.PowerShell.Unix completers. So the idea here is on both Windows and Linux, if you use a WSL command that's available, or if you use a bash command, specifically bash, that's available to you from wherever you're sitting, we will use bash's tab completion function for tab completion in PowerShell. So if I use Docker and then I go tab, like in bash, it's going to go container, service, node, whatever. PowerShell, you need you got to bring along a module that re-implements all that tab completion logic in PowerShell. What we'll do is we'll go, if bash has got a way to complete, if we don't have a way to complete this and we're going to our default completer or whatever, we're just going to go ask bash to complete it for us. And then we'll pipe back what the the completion options are. So things like that. It's just we just want to get to a point where there's nothing you're missing. It's
nice.
But
okay. So on that then, kind of I guess elephant in the room maybe. So the whole WSL Windows file system stuff that the speed there has been. It can be sometimes an issue, right? If I go do an npm run or an npm start on a project from bash that's hosted that's in the Windows file system, it's orders of magnitude slower than say doing it on the bash file system directly, and vice versa, right? Same with PowerShell. Right. And I had heard that maybe there were some improvements coming. Have you heard anything about making that better? Because
they are beyond preview and GA'd, my friend. They are the big shift there is from WSL v1 to WSL v2. And I'm hoping that you haven't switched to V2 yet if you're still experiencing those problems, because it was largely sort of the raison d'etre, the reason for existence of WSL v2 was those file system problems. And so basically they moved from using a platform abstraction layer in software at the kernel level to using a VM-based solution that, where the file system's already been a lot more optimized. You can upgrade your existing WSL installs with a special WSL upgrade command. I'm sure if you all go out there and search for WSL v2, yes, right up here at the top, there's an awesome piece of documentation from the WSL team that will tell you how to set your distribution version to WSL 1 or 2, and that will, you have to have some Hyper-V components or some sort of virtualization platform stuff installed, and you may have to go flip a switch in the BIOS or something like that, but that should alleviate most, if not all, of those problems.
Yeah, I mean WSL2. So I've used that for a long time now.
Damn it!
Pretty much
okay,
since
that didn't help
since
you. You guys can cut me off when I go on.
No, it's okay.
It's like,
no, but it's good information for people who haven't moved yet. No, and it's absolutely significantly better than WSL1.
Yeah.
There's still a bit of a slowdown between, like, when you're accessing files across the blood-brain barrier, I guess we want to call it that, but. I had heard, maybe it was like last summer, maybe, that there were still a few like sort of outstanding performance things that were being worked on, and I think that's the thing that's holding me back from switching back and forth between them all the time. So I end up doing PowerShell with Windows stuff and do Bash with stuff that's in Linux, and just kind of leave them still separated. So,
well, and this is kind of why I love the, like, going all the way back, bringing it around to like the remote VS Code feature. It's like, if you love Linux as the platform, and I know like a lot of people go, well, I'm not always internet connected, but even then, you can run a super thin, GUI-less Linux VM on your local box and then have this remote connection to it with SSH. And the thing I kind of like about that is, preserve state, right? Like, God knows, like, I mean, I even told Christos, like, when, we were starting up the call, he dropped me a link to join. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I have to wait for, my 900,000 edge tabs to finish loading, because God forbid I lose my session that I had from the last time I booted my machine. That's half of my to-do list is in tabs.
I will stop you there. Did you know that now you can mount those tabs as file system?
I saw a Hacker News post on this the other day, but I didn't click on it. What is because that's such a PowerShell thing to do. Like, we've got the Azure Provider Drive, right, where you can like navigate your Azure resources as a file system. That was like the original. But, no, I should check that out. I'm loving the vertical tabs feature in Edge myself. It is like I am, because all I do is I throw them over there. I don't think about it, and then I click the little like show me the pin thing, and then I've got it pinned just for when I want to go clean out tabs, and just the ability to like read down and just go nope, and close them all up. Like, that is perfection.
Yeah.
And you can switch them back and forth. Like, if you just want to put it there when you do that so you can read them. Because when they get so thin and you can't tell what they are anymore, the favicons disappear.
Yeah.
The favicon disappears. You just get that little sliver.
I'm not that bad with my browsers. I tend to clear them out very frequently. I've got a new we got a new motto for PowerShell. I think Yanisco did a better job in marketing than I did. He says, "The power of the cell is PowerShell."
Poetic, very simple.
I mean, sold, right? Right.
Sold. Where are my stickers?
You know what? Yeah, we should order some stickers. Couple of more questions. Somebody was asking whether you can now run PowerShell in notebooks. Do you know if that's...
Ooh, yeah. Oh, man. You want to talk about, cans of worms about, like, hey, which do I pick, tool A or tool B or tool C or tool D? Notebooks are freaking awesome. For those that don't know what notebooks are, they're basically rich, annotated, executable documents, right? So imagine that your PowerShell script, had a bunch of markdown in it, and that you could actually render that markdown in line with script blocks, and that you could execute those script blocks in line with the rest of the markdown, right? That's essentially what we're looking at here with notebooks. So there's a ton of innovation happening in that space. There's a zillion different language runtimes and implementations for these things. To kind of unpack where PowerShell currently lives, we're integrated in what's called the .NET Interactive kernel. .NET Interactive is an implementation of a .NET kernel for something called Jupyter. That's Jupyter, because it has its roots in Python, but now supports kind of these arbitrary pluggable kernels. So .NET Interactive, you can use it with Jupyter or Jupyter compatible runtimes, which includes a lot of like cloud-hosted CodeSpaces kind of scenarios where, hey, I'm going to project this kernel up, and then I'm going to execute this notebook stuff, in a web GUI or whatever on someone else's, cloud dollars. But basically, that they've integrated PowerShell there. So if you go to github.com/.net/interactive, there's tons of info on how to get started with that thing. There's Docker containers, cloud-hosted solutions, demos, all this kind of stuff. But that actually means that you can mix and match .NET and PowerShell. Again, more than you already could.
More.
Right, and I think they support F# in that kernel as well. Like, you can just really go crazy. But that thing's awesome, and that's highly compatible with Jupyter, which is a bunch of cloud-hosted solutions out there. It does mean that you basically have to use a Jupyter GUI in order to write the thing, because what it spits out as an IPNB, it's the IPython notebook, is a giant JSON or some kind of schematized text of all this different stuff about where the script blocks are and how the file's formatted and all this stuff, right? It's not really a human readable text document. So when you load the thing up, you got to load it into something like Jupyter. So, but Jupyter is everything and is highly compatible. So if you're in that ecosystem, you like those tools, great. That's what you should use.
Sweet.
If you don't, we also support, at least in Visual Studio Code Insiders, I think it's going to make its way into non-insiders pretty soon. You got to pick up the PowerShell preview extension as well, but it's something called PowerShell Notebook Mode in VS Code, which is literally what I was describing earlier. Hey, here's a bunch of PowerShell script, and then where you leave comments, those comments are rendered as Markdown. So, if I put my first $, after that, everything after that is going to get rendered as Markdown. So I can put headings in, code blocks, any kind of rich formatting. And what that means is if I'm not in PowerShell Notebook mode and I hand this script to someone who doesn't have VS Code or this extension installed, it's still going to execute as a PowerShell script, and they can still read that Markdown as plain text inside the document, right? Also means I can share that file between CI/CD environments and my local dev environment, right? I don't have to sort of create this system where PS1's getting injected to an IPNB and then also sent over to my testing infrastructure or whatever. So there's just sort of trade-offs there. Both are very well supported. I've used both. Notebooks are awesome. It's great for like help desk run books, right? You're walking through, okay, try this code. Okay, here's why we did that. Here's what to look for. Okay, now try this code. It's great for learning and education. You're seeing this way more. People host repos full of tutorials that let you kind of play along. It's great for testing stuff on someone else's cloud dollar you're not paying for. All kinds of stuff.
Free stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember doing Jupyter a lot when I did a lot of work in Spark, and of course at the time it was like Python and Scala and whatever, and so being able to just do this just sort of arbitrarily, like it seemed to be very data focused when I was doing it a couple years ago, and now that it seems to be just sort of arbitrary and available for anything, right? Is a better way to do .NET Interactive and stuff. That's awesome. Love it.
Yeah, we support all that like data plotting, plotting graphs and doing scatter plots and this, that, and the other, rendering circles and stuff like that. We have all that support in there, but I have no illusion that like that is not what the majority of PowerShell folks want to be doing with this thing. It's like we want to support it for completeness sake because it's a Jupyter world, but the reality is it's a totally different scenario here that we're supporting than that data world, and I think Jupyter has a long way to go from an adoption standpoint in terms of like there. I just think people haven't realized. That sounded negative on Jupyter. I just mean I think people haven't realized just how much potential there is there, and the Jupyter folks have kind of always been very data oriented, and so there's a bunch of people going, I'm not data oriented, so I don't care. But really, it's this model. It just makes so much sense to go. Here's a piece of documentation. Like we already do this in docs at Microsoft.com, right? You're reading some docs. and then you go, oh, there's some PowerShell example, or AZ CLI example, run, and then it just spins out a Cloud Shell and runs it. Like, that's basically what a notebook is, but like just abstracted to the whole world. Like, they're just awesome. They're more awesome comments, basically. So it's like, why would you not want to? Or it's an executable Word doc. Like, it's awesome no matter how you cut it.
Yeah. Somebody mentioned PS Cones. Do you know that?
PS Cones. Yeah. So PS Cones, that's PSKOANS.
Yep.
Was done by a community member of ours, Vex32. Joel Sallow, major contributor to PowerShell. Major shout out. He's an awesome guy. Works for Chocolatey. And basically he built it as an open source module to help people interactively learn how to use PowerShell.
Nice.
Right. So this is, you load this thing up and it sort of guides you. It's a very interactive sort of, self-guided kind of tour through PowerShell. And it's Cones. It's very, there's some existential aspect there. It's very introspective, I will say.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's great. And for those of you that do learn better by just getting your hands dirty and just using the damn thing, PS Cones is where it's at, right? I still recommend, 30 days of lunches, PowerShell and 30 days of lunches for folks that like books. I think from a video perspective, going back to Jeffrey Snover and Jason Helmick's original 3.0, learning sessions is still awesome because they still go through all the core fundamentals of PowerShell. But there's stuff on Pluralsight now as well that's more modernized. There's tons of great content on YouTube. So definitely, in terms of learning PowerShell, like at this point, the hard part should be motivation and time. And the content definitely exists, and much of it is free. So if you need specifics, you can @ me on Twitter. Which, did you have a Twitter? Did you drop my handle somewhere or something so folks
We have it here. I dropped it as part of the introduction to the show, but we will, you know what? In fact, I will reach out to you after the show, and we'll grab some of these links so we can share them.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you've been taking good notes.
Because
your Twitter is also right next to your face, so.
On the live stream. So
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not actually looking at the real one. I was like, is it? Did I was like, I thought maybe there was something in my room, like I had something on the wall, or like it was on a sticker on my shirt or something. I immediately just started like where it's next to my head, floating in this light here.
No, we'll make sure that we share the links as part of the YouTube video. So for people that were not able to join us live, they can always catch up offline. Now I'm gonna trigger JP with this question, but YAML. Does PowerShell support and render YAML?
Yeah, so this is a great, you should have given me this question as a lead in to me talking about the platform and the ecosystem, because this is a great example here, right? Folks right off the bat were like, hey, let's add YAML support to PowerShell. We got JSON, why not add YAML? Well, a couple issues, right off the bat. First of all, there was no definitive YAML.NET library like there was for JSON back then, right? JSON had Newtonsoft. Everybody used Newtonsoft. .NET team used Newtonsoft. Now they've got their own implementation that we may move to at some point, but still Newtonsoft gold standard, right?
Right.
YAML, not so clear cut. So all of a sudden now we're trying to, are we going to pick winners here? Are we going to say that that's the one .NET library? There were trade-offs with both. Okay, let's wait and see. Then at some point you get to a point where, folks are starting to go, hey, this PowerShell package is getting a little big. Like, you guys are really putting the kitchen sink in there, right? And this is why another initiative for 2021, we want to look at, hey, how can we actually allow people to remove things from PowerShell when they don't need them, right? How can I build a package of PowerShell that's got only what I need, like a golden image or a distribution of PowerShell itself? Because, if you're CI/CD, you don't need the interactive subsystem. You don't need remoting necessarily. You don't need all these things that we ship all as one giant monolithic package. So as we're looking at that, we're going, well, we don't really want to add new dependencies, right? Like if we have to pull in an entire .NET library for 1-2 commandlets, it's not great. But what are people's alternative? Well, the alternative is to just install the PS YAML module from PowerShell Gallery because it's very well maintained. The community does a phenomenal job. It brings your library dependencies. You only grab it if you need it. You could ship it in your golden images if you want. And we really want that to be the central model going forward, right? So one day, if people say, well, it's so critical to have YAML built in, like I need YAML before I can even run PowerShell get. Okay, well maybe we should go and put YAML commandlets in there, right? But the reality is we need to be coming up with ways that we can move those commandlets that are already in PowerShell out to the gallery, right? So that you've got more of this kind of node situation where, hey, you're not,
pick and choose what you need rather than
exactly. And it doesn't, we don't want to go to the extreme where you get the left pad kind of problem, right? That Node has, where you're shipping like a math.floor function in its own library or something crazy. But yeah, it's that's where we're trying to go. And so yes, like YAML is supported by the lovely YAML modules in the gallery, and you probably won't see it added to PowerShell anytime soon. But we're going to take a more aggressive kind of hardline stance, I think, going forward in terms of, hey, we want to keep this innovation in the gallery where it's accessible to everyone and it's not intruding on everyone, right?
Right. It's been great, man. I mean, we've learned so many things, and I'm pretty sure that we can fill 5 hours of more of you.
We definitely
here.
can, and I'm going to come back, and you've got a whole rest of your show to go run. I've already run way over, I'm sure.
I'm not kicking you out. I'm not saying you have to go, right?
Oh,
but,
no.
Just want to, I'm conscious of your time, and
it's
we
fine.
Definitely...
It's all downhill from here, so,
I don't know.
Start 2021 strong and fall off a cliff quickly, so,
Yeah.
It's
we start with the
2022.
highlight, and then everything is just down.
A sequel to 2020.
Well, yeah, thanks for coming.
People love being here. Yeah, people love being here, and we'll have you more.
No, this is great. And if I could just plug myself here a little bit real quick, we do PowerShell community call on the third Thursday of every month. You can get to that at aka.ms/PS community call. All the info's there. We've got links to past calls, transcripts, question and answers. We do post an issue in that repo on the third Thursday, or hopefully before the third Thursday of every month, for you to post questions ahead of time, especially if you can't make the call. It is a Teams live event, so you can join and ask questions in the margin and all that sort of thing. But you get me, you get the rest of the PMs, you get the whole PowerShell engineering team, or most of them at least, they're folks that are around joining that call. You get to ask us questions directly. We have, go through all of our latest releases, blog posts, previews, all that good stuff. So definitely, if you like this format, we'll be back, but also, come say hi to us on the PowerShell turf.
Yeah, and we'll share all these links as part of the YouTube video. So again, people don't have to worry about catching the chat and trying to find them. We love having you here. It was fantastic. We learned so many things, and we look forward to having you again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christos, and JP. Thank you so much. Everything ran great, and I'm really looking forward to coming back.
Thank you.
And catch in your next episode here. I gotta see what's going on with the rest of it. I'll catch the real stream.
Sounds good, man. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, folks. Until next time. See you soon.
Yeah. Happy Monday.
See ya.
Speak soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.